the 25th film in the MCU, at least according to Wikipedia. I'm not sure if that's true, but we're going to go with that. And the movie that more or less kicks off phase 4 of the MCU, at least with an origin story. Let's talk about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, and welcome to my mostly spoiler-free review of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. The last minute or two, I think we are going to get into a little bit of spoiler territory because there's something I have to talk about with this movie. But if you haven't seen it yet, the first, 85% is going to be completely spoiler free. So don't worry about that. You can just sort of tune out at that point. But before we get into this Marvel movie, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, we want to welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. And I know that this is not usually the destination for superhero fare and that kind of thing. We do Masked Singer videos. We do a lot of TV reviews of new and upcoming shows. But look, I sort of think that I have an interesting perspective on this stuff, more so than maybe a lot of the videos you'll see on YouTube, because I don't follow comic books. I don't really follow Marvel. I follow the movies here in the MCU, but yeah, I'm certainly not what you'd call a comic book geek. So I think maybe that allows me to offer some sort of interesting perspective on it that maybe you won't see in other videos. I don't know. But anyway, in any case, the movie's been out a couple of weeks already, so this isn't going to be one of my super long ones, I don't think. But there is a lot to talk about, so we're going to get to that right now. So this is, to me, what really is going to start phase 4. I know phase 4 technically started with Black Widow, but of course that was a character we already knew and really was just kind of a setup for the next Black Widow. Now that, spoiler alert for Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame, but she's dead. So of course that movie takes place years in the past, whereas this one takes place within the current continuity of the MCU. So for whatever that's worth, I guess technically Black Widow is phase 4. And of course the TV stuff, that's phase 4 as well. WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Loki, that's all sort of part of phase 4 as well. But for movies, for origin stories, this is the first new character we're being introduced to in phase 4. And this is sort of the latest in a long line of characters I had never heard of before the movies were announced. I didn't know what Guardians of the Galaxy was. I don't think I knew Ant-Man. I didn't know Doctor Strange. So, I've been learning with these movies. So when they have origin stories, I'm like, okay, cool, because I never even heard of this person or this group. I didn't know their origin either. And that applies here too for Shang-Chi. In fact, not only that, but I am unfamiliar with the star of the film, Simu Liu, who does come from a very popular comedy show in Canada called Kim's Convenience, which I always see popping up on Netflix as like, hey, check this out. So it must be sort of in my wheelhouse. I just finished Schitt's Creek, and that's obviously, a Canadian comedy as well. So maybe it was that connection. But I've heard people say good things about this show, so now I have even more of a reason to kind of check it out, because this guy, Simu Liu, is really good in this movie. And so, yeah, essentially this is your sort of typical Marvel origin story. We get these every year or two, and this year we're going to get a lot of them, because we're getting the Eternals later this year as well, which I don't really know anything about them either. But this takes a very different path than a lot of origin stories. I would liken it more to Black Panther in the respect that it really is very reverent to an entire sort of makeup and race of people. Black Panther, obviously, for the African American community, was huge, and almost everybody in the film was black, which is very, very unique for a superhero movie. It's partially, I think, why it just broke all these box office records. It did so well. And here we get the same kind of treatment with the Asian American community, or the Asian community in general. So in that respect, it's a little akin to Black Panther. I think it's a little akin to Guardians of the Galaxy as well, in the sense of just characters that a lot of people aren't really familiar with. I mean, even my comic book buddies weren't necessarily familiar with the Shang-Chi legend or the character at all. So essentially, this becomes a family type of story because we see a lot of build up with that in the couple of intro scenes. With uh, Shang Li sort of learning his powers and being trained. But even before that, we open, years and years ago with his parents. His father is this sort of immortal creature. So we see his parents sort of connecting in that way. So this has, decades and decades and decades of build up before we get to really the meat and potatoes of the current story. And that is Shang-Li is living in the States with his good buddy played by Aquafina. And they are, car valets. And so just sort of living the life. And she doesn't know anything about his powers, and he hasn't really, produced them in a while. But when they're on a bus to work one day, some thugs come up and try to steal an amulet that he has. So there we learn, okay, well, this dude has got some powers, and we learn a little bit more about that as Aquafina almost kind of is learning about it as well. She plays, there's not a love interest, but she plays his best friend Katie, and so due to some circumstances, they end up going back to his home country to figure out what's going on with the 10 rings, what's going on with these thugs, and there he meets up with his sister. And eventually the story becomes a battle between father and son. And that's about, I mean, that's right there, maybe kind of spoilery. I don't know. But I don't watch trailers, so I'm not sure how much they revealed in the trailer. But the crux of this movie is the father-son story, so it's almost impossible to review it without really sort of talking about that and talking about the family dynamic here in general. So, all right. The good and the bad. Well, the bad, I guess, really is only that it's a Marvel origin story. It's, a slight bit generic in that way. But for the most part, it really, really delves off into its own thing and in brilliant fashion as well. So Aquafina, let's start with her because she's sort of the side character. And I thought she was going to be the comic relief character, but that actually comes a little bit later in the movie, which again, we'll cover that in the spoiler territory. But she's great here. I know her mostly from comedies, but what really turned me on to being a huge fan of hers is this big dramatic movie she did called The Farewell. And so right there, I was like, okay, well, this lady can do comedy and drama very well. And I wasn't sure actually at first what to think of her. I saw her, I think, first in Ocean's 8, and I was like, well, her voice is a little annoying, and I don't know what her deal is. And then, she hosted SNL, and she did the Crazy Rich Asians, and then now she has that Comedy Central show, which I love. And then in interviews, she's great. She played Cece the Dragon in Raya and the Last Dragon. I think she's a true talent, and here she doesn't do a ton of action stuff, but I think you could add sort of action star now to her resume as well. So she can kind of do it all. And other than maybe a couple of throwaway comedic lines that kind of took me out of the movie a little bit, I was like, all right, this isn't necessarily like Guardians here. We don't have to be completely jokey. Let's kind of stick to the task at hand. Some of the quips were fine. I thought maybe they dove a little too into that well, but look, these are minor nitpicks for this movie. So Shang-Chi himself, I think, is a great character. I was loving learning the backstory and learning all about him. And this actor, Simu Liu, rather, that plays him is fantastic. And he was trained in a few of the martial arts before the movie started filming, but then he learned a bunch of others along the way, like 4 or 5 other regimens as he was prepping for this role. The visual component of this is outstanding. I love that this is only a theatrically released movie. Disney did not decide to put this out as, you can pay $30 to watch it on your little TV. No, go to the theater and see it because that's the only way you can see it, but that's the perfect way. The visual component of this movie is excellent. It's so, so good. And the reverence to, Asian culture and history and stuff like that really plays a factor in here as well. I thought they were very reverent to that. And the other thing I really took note of about maybe a half hour, 40 minutes into the movie is it had an amazing balance between action sequences and more dramatic character development moments. I think some of the movies in these in the superhero genre get sort of bogged down by, okay, well, we have to have X amount of exposition, especially with the character people don't really know. We have to really like talk the heck out of these characters and discuss and really explore. And they did that, but throughout the movie, every like 7, 8 minutes, there was this great action sequence that lasted like 2, 3, 4 minutes, and then we had a few minutes of downtime, and then another great action sequence. But it never felt like it was in chapters. It never felt like, okay, here's the next fight scene, then we're going to go dramatic. I never thought that. I was like, about 40 minutes in, I was like, wow, this is a really, really well balanced movie, and it never stops in that regard. So I loved that too. All right, so now we're going to get into some spoiler territory for a specific character, because I didn't want this video to be super long, and it's already looking like it. So we got to talk about the Mandarin. So Ben Kingsley's Mandarin appears in this movie in a pretty minor role, but a bit of a comedic one as well. But it basically, he is the worst, I think, character in probably all of the MCU. The Mandarin, first of all, Iron Man 3 is the worst movie of the MCU for me. So when you attach a bad character onto an already bad movie, it's just a waste and it's a mess. And my buddy Joe and I have always kind of joked about, some of his taglines from the trailer. And he looked cool in the trailer, but then was a big, bomb in the movie. So here they give Kingsley and the character himself a chance to get redemption, and just on the character, not on anybody specific necessarily, but to explain away what happened in Iron Man 3. And that is one benefit of having this massive universe, is you can sort of do that and take some liberties with, okay, well, 5 movies ago, we really messed this up. Let's correct it. Here's how we're going to do it. And they did that here. And I was like, I texted 3 different people as I was watching the movie, because I was watching it by myself. Which I sort of regret not watching it like opening weekend with a big group, but be that as it may. But I watched it by myself, so I took my phone out when that happened, and I was like, "Oh my God, the Mandarin is in this thing!" Because I'm not one for spoilers. I don't know if that was part of the trailer or if people knew that going in or not, but I didn't, and that kind of blew me away. But I'm glad that we got that redemption for that character, because I think Ben Kingsley deserved better than that role. And I love how they explain it away. I won't get into that specific of it, but yeah, I mean, I thought that was a fun addition to this movie. The movie, by the way, directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, who has done Short Term 12, The Glass Castle, and Just Mercy, all with Marvel superstar Brie Larson, who plays Captain Marvel. So I think that's cool that we're getting him now into the Marvel universe as well. So look, like I said, I was gonna try and not make this too long, but there's so much to talk about with this movie. But I think we'll pretty much wrap it there. Here's the thing. I very rarely give A+s out in general. In fact, this year I haven't given any yet. Usually I give maybe 2 or 3 a year. And my buddy Joe pointed out to me once, you've never given a superhero movie an A+. And yes, that is true. I think retroactively, I would probably give The Dark Knight an A+. And I would probably also give the first Iron Man an A+. So I don't dole out A+ often. But like Guardians of the Galaxy, that's an A. A couple of the Avengers movies were A's. Deadpool is an A. So I've thrown some A's out there. Spider-Man: Homecoming, Wonder Woman, if we're going to go back to DC, the original Wonder Woman movie from a few years ago, that was an A. So I've certainly given some A's. And while I probably had more fun watching the Suicide Squad movie from earlier this year, I probably had more fun watching that. I think technically this is the better made film. By a lot, actually. And it's definitely the best origin movie of the Marvel Universe since probably Iron Man. So I am not going to give it an A+. I'm not, a few nitpicks in there. that I've already mentioned. But this is about as close as you can get, I think. So far, I would say it's probably my favorite movie of the year. Um, and again, my grades are based on many factors. So even though I had more fun watching Suicide Squad, this is clearly the better made film. So I leave Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings with a very strong A. It's a great movie. It is so worthy to be, right up there in the conversation with that first Iron Man, with the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, with Endgame even. It's a great movie. So if you haven't seen it yet, please go see it. And if you have, then you already know. But do you agree with me? Comment in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on this movie. With that, we'll wrap. And thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.